I took the job for the silence. After the office, the thought of being completely alone for weeks felt like heaven. No people. No photocopiers. Just the woods. I was a fire watch. My post was Tower 7, a 70-foot tall structure perched on a ridge in the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest. For 3 months, my world was a single room, 15 feet square, with glass on all sides, surrounded by a sea of endless green. My only connection to the outside was a radio for daily check-ins and a supply truck that arrived once every 2 weeks. The first month was paradise. I read books. I learned the names of the birds. I spent hours scanning the horizon with the big mounted binoculars, the ones we call the big eyes, looking for even the faintest wisp of smoke. I saw deer, bears, and elk. It was peaceful. The oddness started small. I would come back from walking the perimeter at dusk to find the door to the tower, which I always locked, unlatched. I dismissed it as wind, or maybe I just forgot. Then my food started disappearing. Not much. A can of beans. A packet of jerky. Again, I blamed a clever raccoon. It's easy to brush things off when you're alone. Your mind becomes your only companion and seeks rational answers. Then the sounds began. Not during the day. Always at night once the sun vanished and the forest below turned into a dark pit. It would start with footsteps. A slow, deliberate crunch, crunch, crunch on the gravel path leading to my tower. I would shine my spotlight down, sweeping the beam through the trees. Nothing. The footsteps stopped the instant the light hit the ground. One night, I heard something new. A scrape. Metal on metal. It came from the outside of the tower itself. Something was climbing the ladder. I could hear the groaning of the rungs, one after another, slow and steady. I stood frozen at the trapdoor, my hand on the lock while holding a hatchet I kept for kindling. The climbing stopped just below me. I held my breath. I could hear breathing. A low, wet rattling sound. It lingered for what felt like an hour. Then I heard the slow crunch, crunch, crunch as it descended and walked away. I reported it on the radio the next morning. My voice shook. The dispatcher, a guy named Carl, was nice but skeptical. Probably a bear, Mike. They get curious. Maybe a buck rubbing his antlers on the support beams. You're out there a long time. It plays tricks on you. I wanted to believe him. I tried to. The turning point came on a night so dark I couldn't see my own hands. A storm had knocked out the radio. I was truly alone. I used the big eyes, scanning the tree line more for something to do than anything else. The night vision on those binoculars is powerful. It turns the dark world a bright green. I was slowly panning across the north ridge when I saw it. A figure. It stood between 2 tall pines, perfectly still. It was tall, too tall, and thin. Impossibly thin. And it was facing the tower. I couldn't make out features, just a long, stark silhouette against the green backdrop of the trees. My blood ran cold. I adjusted the focus, my hands sweaty. The image sharpened. It was a man, or something like a man. He wore what looked like old, tattered forestry service gear from decades ago. His face was pale and gaunt. He was holding something up to his own face. A pair of binoculars. He was watching me back. I stumbled away from the big eyes, my heart racing. I fumbled for my flashlight, shining it into the darkness toward the north ridge. I saw nothing. The beam was swallowed by the night. Terrified, I returned to the binoculars. I had to know. I had to see. I looked again. The figure was gone. I scanned frantically, left, right, and then I stopped. He was closer. 100 yards from the base of the tower now. Still standing perfectly still. Still holding the binoculars to his face pointed directly at me. I don't know how long we stayed like that. I was trapped in my glass box. He stood in the dark. It felt like hours. I was paralyzed by a fear so intense it felt like a physical weight on my chest. Then, as I watched, he slowly lowered his binoculars. His face was in shadow. But I saw his arm raise. He pointed. Not a casual gesture. A deliberate finger, aimed directly at me, at the tower. Then he turned and walked back into the trees. He didn't vanish. He just walked. Slowly. Until the darkness consumed him. I didn't sleep. I sat with my back against the wall, hatchet in hand, until the sun rose. The supply truck came 2 days later. I didn't explain. I simply quit. I left everything behind. My books, my gear, I just got in the truck and left. I moved to the city. I got a job in a noisy, open-plan office. I'm never alone. I'm surrounded by people all day, every day. But at night, when the city noises fade, I sometimes wake up and go to my apartment window. I look out at the dark windows of the building across the street. And sometimes, in one of those windows, I see a dark shape. A silhouette. Still. Watching. And I wonder if I ever really left that tower. Or if the things that watched just followed me home. Most people think a hospital is busiest during the day. They're wrong. The real work happens at night, the healing, the dying, the watching. I've been a night shift nurse on the palliative care ward for 10 years. I thought I'd seen everything. I thought I understood the rhythms, the sounds, and the silences of this place. Our ward was old and scheduled for renovations that never seemed to happen. The lighting was always a little too dim, and the hallways felt a bit too long. Room 7B, at the very end of the hall, was always the last to be filled. It had a reputation among the staff. Nothing superstitious, just a feeling. A chill that the heating vents couldn't touch. A silence that felt heavier, more complete. Mrs. Davison was in 7B. She was my last patient of the night. End stage, unresponsive. Her family, bless them, had just left, exhausted. It was just her and me. And the sounds of the hospital at 3 a.m. The first thing I noticed was the smell. It wasn't the typical antiseptic or sickness. This was earthy, like wet clay and old leaves. I checked the vents. The window was sealed shut, but the smell lingered right outside her door. Then, the sounds started to change. The heart monitor's steady, rhythmic beep sometimes stuttered. It wasn't a dangerous arrhythmia, just a hiccup. A single, skipped beat. And in that tiny sliver of silence between beeps, I'd hear something else. A whisper. It wasn't coming from the room's speakers. It sounded like it was coming from the walls themselves. A low, rustling murmur, like many voices talking all at once, too quiet to understand any words. I'd check on Mrs. Davison. She hadn't moved. Her breathing was shallow but even. I told myself it was the pipes. The wind outside. The auditory hallucinations of a sleep-deprived mind. But it got louder. One night, after a skipped beat, the whisper wasn't a murmur. It was a single, clear word spoken right into my ear as I stood by the medicine cart. Soon, I spun around. The hallway was empty. My skin prickled with goosebumps. That's when I saw him. A man stood at the far end of the hall, near the stairwell door. He was dressed in a dark, heavy coat, even though it was summer. His face was in shadow. He was just standing there, watching. I took a step forward. Sir, visiting hours are over. He didn't move. He didn't speak. The stairwell door was propped open with a janitor's bucket. It swung shut slowly, with a long, soft sigh. When it clicked closed, the man was gone. I reported it to security. They found no one. No one had signed in. The door to the roof was locked. They said I was tired. I almost believed them. The turning point came 2 nights later. Mrs. Davison's vitals began to dip. Not drastically, but enough. The beeping from the monitor became more urgent. I was in her room, adjusting her oxygen, when the lights flickered. Not a power surge. A slow, deliberate dimming, and then they came back up. The whispering was in the room with me now. It was no longer coming from the walls. It was coming from the corner of the room, the darkest shadow by the window. It was clearer now. It wasn't just one voice. It was many, overlapping, speaking the same phrase in a dry, rustling chant. "We're here. We're here. We're here." And the man in the coat was there too. Standing in that dark corner. I could see his face now. It was pale and waxy, utterly expressionless. His eyes were closed. He wasn't the one whispering. He was just waiting. I backed out of the room, my training forgotten, pure instinct taking over. I fumbled for the call button at the nurse's station, my eyes glued to the door of 7B. The whispering stopped. The heart monitor flatlined. A long, piercing tone filled the hallway. Then, from inside the room, came a different sound, a soft, collective sigh of satisfaction. And then, silence. I forced myself to go back in. The room was ice cold. The smell of wet earth was overwhelming. Mrs. Davison was gone. But on the empty bed, pressed into the white sheet, was a perfect imprint of a body lying on its side. And all around it, as if a crowd had been standing there, were dozens of overlapping footprints made of dried, crumbling mud. I quit the next day. I couldn't go back. I work in a quiet clinic now, only day shifts. But sometimes, when I'm trying to fall asleep, I hear it. The hum of the refrigerator downstairs will drop for a second. And in that perfect slice of silence, I'll hear it. A rustling whisper from the corner of my dark bedroom. "We're here." And I know they weren't there for her. They were there for the space, for the silence, for the waiting. And a hospital night shift always has one more patient.